Welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm BJ. With me is Jeff. And today, in spirit of Halloween, we're watching the first movie ever to give me a nightmare, the 1986 made-for-TV movie, Mr. Boogedy.
Boogedy, boogedy, boo!
I don't know why I was surprised by you doing that, but I was.
The appropriate thing to do, because of this movie, is to add in a boogedy, boogedy, boo at any time, whether it's appropriate or not. It's always fine. It always is.
They really only went boogedy, boogedy, boo when it was appropriate.
Okay. Yep. Okay. We'll talk more about that.
Okay, I was going to challenge you on that, but that's probably more of a spoiler section thing. So, anyway, as you may have guessed, given by the fact that this movie gave me nightmares, I watched it at a very young age, and actually, the more I thought about it, I was kind of a coward as a little kid. Not just in this situation, mind you, but it just kind of led me on the path of all the things I was scared of as a kid. I'm like, yeah, you always hear about how kids are fearless when they're young. I'm like, no, I was plenty afraid when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was fearful of everything, it seems like. And the things that were actually scary, I didn't care about. Like, I don't know, like when that assignment is due or something like that. Anyway, yes, that's an interesting historical fact about us that most people probably don't care about.
I say that's more of a. I say worry about when your homework assignments do. That's more of a what's the word? Existential dread as compared to it's a horror movie fear. Anyway, so Jeff, after I know I used to make you and mutual friend watch this movie back when we were a kid. So, but
did we? I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure I made you guys watch it, but
okay.
But anyway, it's probably been a decade or two. So, how do you feel about Mr. Boogedy watching it as an adult?
I don't honestly remember ever watching it as a kid, but I have this vague memory of some show that featured a boogeyman of some sort and that it was scary when I was a kid. And so I assumed that this was the movie because I don't think there's any other movies that have a boogedy-like character in it.
Believe it or not, this does have a sequel, The Bride of Boogedy. So
yes, and I even was brave enough to watch half of that, and we can talk more. Yeah, so think now that I am all grown up and not as tall as I would have wanted, but pretty tall, grown up, I say that this movie is good. I liked it, but at the same time, I don't think that it will keep everyone engaged the whole time. The first movie, Mr. Boogedy, is really it's a fun movie and people are more likely to enjoy it. The Bride of Boogedy, the sequel, which we're not really talking about, but I guess I'll mention that one is a little bit slower. But the thing that really gets me in this movie is just the characters. They have these really good one-liners here and there that is just really good.
Oh, the best thing about Mr. Boogedy is that they knew exactly what they were going for and they leaned into it. Like they waste no time establishing that this is a horror comedy and they are leaning and they are all for it.
Yes, the tone of this movie is set well and it's carried well through the whole thing. Yeah, so what did you think, BJ?
I mean, I do view this movie through the rose-tinted goggles of nostalgia, but I had a good time with it. The child actors aren't as annoying as they could have been. That's always kind of a dodgy proposition in movies aimed at a younger audience. Sometimes the kid characters can be a little annoying, but I didn't mind any of them.
They're annoying when you grow up and see them, but when you're a kid, they're like the coolest characters, and they're doing exactly what you would want to do in that situation.
Yeah, and I gotta say, again, don't know if this is just nostalgia's sake, but I was kind of impressed with the sound design and the sound production. I thought it was pretty effective for a kid's horror movie.
Okay.
Okay.
It sounded good. I mean, I didn't pay attention to that as much, but sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Lost- not paying.
So what
Not
what
paying.
is it about the sound that you liked so much?
I I just thought the sound was pretty well put together. The the boogedy laugh is pretty iconic.
Yeah.
The think the music sets the tension pretty good. A lot of the strings. Maybe that's maybe everyone who makes horror movie soundtracks with a lot of strings watches as a kid, and that's where they got it from. Even though that probably predates it. I don't know. I didn't really say much about the sound design in my notes other than I like the sound design.
Yeah. I really like just the family. I like the family and all the different members of the family and just their personalities. All of that is good. And so it's a good family show. It's one you can sit down with the kids. It is kind of scary, but it's Disney scary
Yeah, like I
from the
said, it gave me
80s. So
yeah, it did give me nightmares, but it came out in '86, so I was probably like 3 or 4 when I first watched this. And like I said, I was a coward as a kid.
yeah, really little. I could see how really little kids would think that this is scary. Sure. Yeah.
Uh,
I showed it to my kids and they liked the first one. The second one,
yeah,
they just wanted some other random show. They weren't really into it.
I didn't didn't watch Bride of Boogedy, but I don't remember it being. I remember having its moments, but I don't remember it being as good as Mr. Boogedy.
I would
Oh,
describe it the same way. It does have moments though that are really interesting, and it has a couple of lines that just made me laugh impulsively. But uh, it just doesn't do as well in the overall storyline as Mr. Boogedy.
I from what I remember, Bride of Boogedy, it feels like it's trying a little too hard. Mr. Boogedy just kind of happens, and Bride of Boogedy, I don't know if I'm phrasing it right. I shouldn't really judge a movie I haven't seen in like
Yeah, and I
10
only
or
have seen
20
half
years.
of it.
Anyway, so
All right.
yeah,
Shall we spoil this movie
so
now?
yeah, it's not a very long movie. It's made for TV movie. It was back in the good old days of the Disney Sunday movie, so it's only a 45-minute thing. So yeah,
And
talk
you also
about
showed me the Michael Eisner
it.
introduction
It
that he did for it.
yeah yeah because obviously growing up this day and age, the reason why I watched this movie so much was because my family recorded it off the TV with our VHS tape, and there's there's assuming there is an audience for this podcast, there might be people out there who have no idea what a VCR is. So it's the
It
precursor of having the DVR.
Yep, and it had the special feature. You would put it in to the VCR, you'd put a cassette into the VCR, and then 1.5 seconds later, you were watching something. There was no menus or, oh, let's wait for it to load, or, oh no, there's ads at the beginning of this. There was none of that.
Well, if what you wanted to watch was midway through the tape, you did have to
Yeah,
fast.
that's true. If you
You,
wanted
you,
to,
you did have to
if you
fast forward for like 10 minutes. It's like,
fast
is this
forwarding
the
was
right
another thing.
timestamp? Be
Anyway,
kind to
I
rewind.
actually really like the Michael Eisner intros that he used to do. I don't remember them all super well, but I think it's actually kind of funny to have him come on and introduce a new movie, and then they do a little gimmick. And I don't know, maybe some people won't like it, but I always thought it was fun as a kid. And I know
Yeah,
Walt Disney would do that too. He would introduce a movie, and it wasn't just him talking. There usually was a little bit of a creative theme with it as he introduced it.
yeah. I just had to search for that because I watched the version on Disney Plus, and growing up, the version I saw would have the Michael Eisner skit at the beginning, so I was kind of disappointed it wasn't on there. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go search this, and I found it, and I inflicted it on Jeff.
Yeah. All right. So, are we off to spoil the movie?
I
The
guess
most wonderful
not.
movie of all.
I mean, it's not really a movie full of
Okay.
twists and turns, so I don't know if you can really spoiler it, but let's go.
Okay. So, um, what was I going to talk about?
I don't know.
Oh,
We were gonna argue about something, but I forget what it was.
yeah. We definitely like to
Oh wait,
argue.
it was the appropriate or the inappropriate uses of going boogity boogity boo. I
Oh
believe it
yeah.
was.
Yes. And that was something that stood out to me is a lot of different characters just suddenly love to say boogity boogity boo at opportune times to try and scare the children and the audience, of course. And I thought it was kind of weird because they say it's like a grown person would never just suddenly say boogity boogity boo.
It's only really a couple of people that do it. The first person that does it is like the guy. What did he say it was? He was like the town historian or something, or like the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
The and this character is great. He's played by John Aston, the guy that played Gomez Adams in the Adams Family, and
Yes.
he is clearly just taking this bit part and having fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. Yeah, so the boogeties, the sudden and awkward boogeties were a little weird, but it is
I,
a comedy. It just is a little strange to be. Just the idea of just a grown up suddenly doing that. And a lot in this movie, the father owns a gag store and he's relocating his gag store to this town. And so he loves tricks and all that stuff. But yeah, so there's always the characters in this are always trying to scare the children, which is funny. And the dad is and the mom too. They're both kind of oblivious a lot of the time, which is the funnier part of this for me because I love it how the kids just can't seem to convince the adults of things. They just can't,
uh,
and they come up with all these excuses like, "Oh no, that's impossible." And yeah, it's funny.
well, that's pretty common in stuff that's aimed at kids, right? The adults are. It's always the adults that are the most oblivious to what's going on because the kids know what's going on, but no one believes kids, right?
Exactly. Yep. And it's true too. Adults don't believe kids. They don't. Okay. Gee, so what was I going
So
to say about? Oh yeah, and I just like the intro where they get in there. They arrive at this house, and the dad is like, "Oh, kids, we're here. Look, we've got to this house. It's look at it. It's a fixer-upper." And they get
it's
out, and it's this obvious haunted, creepy mansion. And he's of course chipper and happy about it. This is a great house. We got such a good deal on it.
it's like if you want to know what kind of movie you're in for, you just have to look at the for sale sign of the house because there's like three gags just on that.
Yeah.
Because the realtor is CB Karloff, the company is Devil May Care Realty, and there's a sign hanging off bottom of, and there's this old post hanging off bottom sign, not really haunted.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign.
And the word not like somehow gets burnt or it's not electric, but something happens to the
Oh,
lettering. So then it says
it kind
really haunted.
well, it, like falls off the main sign, like starts glowing, and then like the knot, like I said, the knot gets like burned off, so it's like really haunted. And as they go into the house, the town historian guy is just waiting in the house for them in like this top hat and coat. So it's like the most creepy costume possible for him just sitting or just him having been standing in their front room for who knows how long, just waiting for him to show up.
Yeah, and how odd is that? You go to your new home and the town historian is just like in the parlor, just there waiting for you. Obviously because he has an important warning for you to get away because the house is trouble. It's haunted. But
This is
it's just
very
yeah. There's a lot of odd people. I love the father's line when they talk to him and then he turns to go away and the father says, Thanks, don't ever change. 'Cause I laughed at that. Like, yep, we met a weird person. Don't ever change. Goodbye.
He's a little weird, but he has the spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then one thing I did notice about the movie, as I was listening through it, is that it really does hit a lot of the major like scary movie tropes. Like it does the chair rocking by itself. It does the cabinet doors opening themselves. The creepy light behind the door. You know, all the good stuff that still makes in the movies nowadays.
Yeah.
You watch?
It's like it has all of the things that a real scary movie would typically have, but then it kidifies them. And then it adds in some comedy on top of it. I mean,
I will admit.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, with the storyline, you could make it into a real serious horror film. It has like the skeleton of that.
Yeah, it does have some kind of serious and dark undertones in that there's, you call it a side, it's not really a side plot because it's not really long enough movie to have a side plot, but outside the family living in a haunted house, it turns out there's 3 ghosts. There's Mr. Boogedy, and then there's the young kid and the
Mother and her
mom.
child.
Yeah, there's mother and the child, and the plot is that they were Puritans, I think, right?
Same thing.
Some kind, they're some kind of settlers.
They call them pilgrims. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, they're settlers in this area, and Mr. Boogedy was known as the town curmudgeon, or
curmudgeon.
Maybe curmudgeon, maybe not be a strong enough word.
I don't even know what that word means. Curmudgeon.
Curmudgeon, like grumpy old guy.
Okay. I could see how that could be a useful word. Curmudgeon. Okay.
Anyway, the guy that turned into Mr. Boogedy, he didn't like children, but he fell in love with a beautiful young widow who spurned his advances, and in return, he sold his soul. They're selling us souls in this Disney movie.
Yeah.
To get a magic cloak, which he used to kidnap the kid, the widow's kid to try to blackmail her into marrying him, and then when she confronted him, he accidentally used the magic cloak to blow them up and stuck between worlds or whatever.
Yeah.
So this lady's been trying to save her child from this evil ghost for 300 years, which is kind of dark if you think about.
Yeah. And when the Addams Family guy, the town historian, whoever he is, when he explained this story, at the very end of the story, it ends with him saying, Mr. Boogedy blew up the house. And I almost think he was not impressed with the script. That's the way he delivered the line. It's okay, this is what we wrote. He just blew up the house.
And to be fair to the movie, the way they handled that piece of exposition is pretty good. Is pretty nice because funnily enough, this place is so haunted that the town historical society has a pop-up book about
because the town historical society has lots of time on their hands. So what do they do for their research endeavors? They create pop-up books about the haunted houses in their town.
Oh, by the way, the town name, I don't even call it, was Lucifer Falls.
Yeah, that's exactly how a group of Puritans would love to name their town.
Oh,
yeah, they crossed the ocean for religious freedom, and then they named their town Lucifer Falls or whatever. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's why they said pilgrims, not Puritans.
Yeah.
They never specified what the local religion
Puritan
was.
pilgrims, but they were pilgrims. Yeah, that's kind of... It goes along with a lot of things in this movie where it's obvious haunted, ghosty-like themes to it that are just blatantly there, which is kind of adds to the charm of it, I think. Because there's just obvious titles where they're trying to be in the genre.
They get a lot of mileage out of that door at the end of the hall.
They do, and I love the line leading up to it because they they're looking for Mr. Boogedy, and they go upstairs, and there's this mysterious green light behind a door at the end of the hallway. And the father goes, kids, did any of you leave on a mysterious green light at the end? And I don't know. It's a good... I didn't deliver it very well. But yeah. My favorite was when they're going up the stairs and the mom says, like, honey, what if he blows us up? And then they walked straight down the house.
I will say that I think between like them going to end the hall to open that door 2 or 3 times, I think between that and probably the Banshee from Darby O'Gill and Little People, there's probably a good 2 or 3 months when I was a kid that I was scared to open the door.
I was scared of Darby O'Gill. Totally. That movie was terrifying. The Banshee in that? Oh, yeah, as a kid, I just like wanted to... I had to endure through that, but all I really wanted to do was see the leprechauns dancing in that whole scene with their treasure room.
Like,
I mean, that scene I could just watch 10 times over. It was so much fun, but
then you had to watch the rest of the movie and get traumatized by the Banshee.
Exactly. Yep.
Maybe there's a Darby O'Gill and Little People viewing party in our future. I don't know. The true Halloween movie, Darby O'Gill and Little People. So I'm looking at my notes, and I wrote a reminder to myself now. I've moved a few times, but I do not own a home. And in your case, you have experienced the whole adventure of buying a home and moving a family into it. So I wrote myself a note to ask you, how haunted would a house have to be to have you try to move out of it?
If it was that house, it would have to be really haunted. Because if I got a good deal on a house that nice, yeah.
It was a pretty big house, like what, 2 floors in the basement?
Yeah. Yeah, and it looked like sturdy architecture. Okay. Although I would be a little wary of how well it was really holding up and what repairs would be required, and heating and cooling the house would be expensive. It would need a lot of work to make it less expensive.
It came with stuff though. What's the word? Came
fully furnished.
That's it, furnished.
Yeah, it had all sorts of... It had like baskets of laundry in the basement.
Yeah, like boxes that has like a harpsichord. Like the house comes with a harpsichord, dude. How fast did the last family move if they left their harpsichord behind?
Yeah, I would also be worried about the electric in a house that old. I'd be thinking, the breaker's gonna trip all the time.
I'm not laughing about that. I'm just laughing because as they come in the house, it's like the first light switch they come across is like a skull.
Yeah. Yeah. Why? Is it a skull?
I'm not sure if that's terrible or awesome. It's like, would I keep that? Would I not?
How many people could really find the light switch if it's inside of the eye socket of a skull? I think no one. No, they'd be living there for 2 years, and then finally someone would be, oh, we found the light switch.
Well, that's why the town historian was there to show them how the light switches worked.
How thoughtful of him.
That's why
he creepily showed up in their living room.
It's like, by the way, I'm just here to show you how the light switches in your house work. You have to stick your eye in the skull and twist.
Yeah. So, although it is funny how the dad constantly wants them to stay, and he tries to convince them because he doesn't want to have to move. He probably got a really good deal on the house. He doesn't want them to lose out on that. And I totally get that. Yeah, moving is not fun. Buying a house, not fun, at least for me. It's a whole ordeal of a thing, and so I wouldn't want to have to do it and then suddenly have to do it all over again. No. Especially if you feel like you got a good deal, then hey, the ghosts are fine. It's all about that nice mortgage that's not too bad.
I feel like that's a pretty standard horror movie trope too, because feel like that happens in The Conjuring as well. They like buy their house at like a bank auction or something for a steal, and that's why they move into it.
And the dad just really wants to stay, and everyone else doesn't. And he,
Well, well, in The Conjuring, it's less that they want to stay or that the dad wants them to stay. It's more that they can't really afford to move again. Because the whole reason why they could afford the house in the first place was because it was so cheap.
yeah.
So it's less that they it's less that one of them wants to stay in more that they don't really have anywhere else to go. So they have to try to deal with it in The Conjuring. Did you ever see The Conjuring?
No, I've never seen it.
It's pretty good.
I've seen the Simpsons Halloween special, which is made. Which is inspired by that, right?
Uh,
Right? I don't know. There's some
uh,
movie about a family that moves into a house and the walls bleed or something,
I mean, that's
right?
like uh,
I don't know.
that that's Amityville.
Amityville? Oh.
Amityville horror. I don't know.
It did
I
remind me
haven't
a
seen
little
Amityville.
bit. This movie reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah, The Conjuring's a newer movie. It was fairly recent, I think.
Okay. I don't watch a lot of horror movies. It's not really my genre I like.
I really don't either because most horror movies are, at least I should say nowadays. It seems more like most horror movies nowadays are lean more into the gore factor.
Really? Hmm.
At
I
least it
I
seems
like
like,
more of the mystery in horror.
yeah. And I just looked
But
up Conjuring is 2013, so it's not that. It's a. I'm
2013. Time is
we're
speeding up,
getting old.
BJ.
It's like stop it, stop. I didn't need to feel old today. Holy crap. Anyway, but yeah, it seemed. I mean, like at the very least, I guess all the horror movies that like I heard about, it's more about like I I don't know.
Well,
But yeah, like you
the
said, I haven't. Go ahead.
if the horror movie has a really good storyline and it has mystery or it's just well written, then I'll probably watch it and like it. But horror movies to me are very predictable and they're not as scary as some people make them out to be in a lot of. So I don't really. It's just not a movie genre that has really been that interesting to me. And I don't like the whole really dark, violent, twisted stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
no,
not, some people might like it because you watch movies to try and feel something and that so that you can learn about, I don't know, you feel something and therefore you can experience an emotion that you wouldn't actually feel in your normal life. Because you're not going to walk down the street and suddenly be scared that often. But in a movie, you can kind of experience those feelings in a movie setting as entertainment. So I get why people want to watch horror movies. It's about feeling scared and feeling, um, I guess, fascinated by all of the all the things around it. It's not so much that you like it, but it just draws you in anyway. Um, but I don't know, the real dark and twisty stuff I don't really watch as much anymore. Like when I watch the X-Files, I really love all the supernatural like ones and the episodes that have a lot of mystery to it. But when they get into like the dark serial killer ones, it's a little too much for me, so I skip over those.
I've one of these days I need to figure out if there's a streaming service that I have that has X Files. Sit down, watch them because I never actually. I don't think I've ever actually watched any of the X Files.
You serious? You've never
Yeah,
seen a single one?
I like think maybe it was playing when I was at someone's house, but I never like sat and be like, oh, well, I'm gonna watch the X Files today.
Wow. Well,
I mean,
it's kind of Lovecraftian, but it's based in the 90s and it's more like government
oh,
conspiracy
I,
UFO
it, it,
stuff. And
I mean, I know what the X Files are. I just didn't really sit down and watch them. I mean, you're also talking to the same person. I mean, you're also talking to like the one of like 10 people on the face of the earth that like didn't really like The Simpsons, so I never really watched The Simpsons either.
I never understood that. You didn't
Uh,
like The
we,
Simpsons, or was it just that your family
I
wasn't into it and you also just didn't go along with it?
my I mean, like, no, like, my parents didn't really like The Simpsons, but, like, anytime I sat down and, like, watched Simpsons episodes, I'm like, that was okay, I guess. I mean, like, I remember back when The Simpsons, like, first started, we'd be over at your house with us and mutual friends, and, all of a sudden, like, 6 o'clock rolled around, it's like, oh, Simpsons started, I'm going home. It's like, what?
We would leave to watch The Simpsons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it only happened, like, once or twice, but it was, like, back when Simpsons first started, it was, like, it was a really big thing. Like, you and our mutual friend would, at least that was excuse you gave, maybe just wanted me to go away, I don't know. It's like, oh, BJ's getting annoying. Oh, look, The Simpsons on. You don't like The Simpsons, so
I don't know.
I guess we'll
There's
see you
only
at school
fragments
tomorrow.
that I really remember from all that back then. But yeah, the first like 10, 12 seasons or so of The Simpsons is funny. They have a lot of funny characters. Um, yeah, and their Halloween specials are the best ones. So even if you just watch the Halloween specials, that'll probably be enough to get all of The Simpsons.
At this point, it's a point of honor.
It's a point of honor. It's like, I didn't bother with it.
Maybe that's the wrong term, but I feel like I gave The Simpsons its fair shot. That wasn't for me, so
I kind of feel that way a little bit over Game of Thrones. Like I haven't seen it. I watched like 1.5 episodes, and then I was like, I am done, and I'm never watching this again. I'm not into it.
I read the first book of Game of Thrones. Like, well, they killed the one character I like, so I guess I have to read the other 8 books or whatever. So, and didn't want to pay for HBO to watch a TV series of a book series I didn't really like. So I haven't seen Game of Thrones either.
Yeah.
We're hipsters, Jeff.
And we are hipsters. There's other things I haven't watched, and it's a matter of honor. Like, I haven't seen the latest Star Trek movie or the latest Star Wars movie. I didn't see episode 9. Just decided I'm going to take my journey through life without it.
I think that's less of a point of honor and more along the lines of we just didn't want to do that to ourselves because I think we talked about this before, but me and you, we went and saw Star Trek Into Darkness together. Didn't really like it.
Yep.
You had seen, what's episode 8? Is that The Last Jedi of Star Wars?
I had seen The Last Jedi, which is number 8, and Force Awakens, which is number 7.
You and our mutual friend had seen those two, but I hadn't, so I made you guys come over and watch those with me, and we had such a horrible time that we never saw episode 9, though. So
we were tortured enough.
It's like, I'm not sure if I want to go down this rabbit hole because I want to save it for when we force ourselves watch episode 9 and talk about.
Yeah, and we've been Star Wars geeks forever. We played the Star Wars RPG game in high school and junior high. We created Jedi characters version. And we're Padawans, and we did all that sort of stuff.
Looking back, we probably did the rules wrong, but
we probably did. I think all of our RPG games, we probably had a few rules that were wrong. It's mostly because I hated reading the book, and I just wanted to start playing.
The guy who did most of DMing, reading.
That's true. That's what people told me when they were introducing the game. You have to read this book to learn how to be a dungeon master. And I thought, I've seen it done. I've seen someone be a dungeon master for one adventure. I got it all down. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, and I know that's cringe to a lot of role players out there. They probably, because a lot of people love the rules, but I was never really, I think the basic rules were enough. I didn't really need much more than that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we did play, was it 2nd edition D&D? And
I don't even know if it is. It's the 1989 published version, which didn't even have a number. associated
Oh,
with it. It's like just advanced. I think
yeah,
it's
it
like the
was.
second one they ever published.
Yeah, so yeah, it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I think retroactively got called Second Edition, but I'm not sure. So
Mm.
it's like I don't know because I bought the books from you, but somehow you still have the books.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah, that was quite a clever scheme of mine.
I bought those from you like 20 years ago, but somehow they end up in your house.
Yeah, so I purchased them, and then we didn't play for a while, and I thought I'll just give them to BJ. And then when I gave them to you, suddenly we started playing again, and then it just became
and,
convenient to have them over at my house and my stuff, and
and,
because
and so and so
and
we
they
were
haven't
playing
left.
So we were playing Dungeons and Dragons with two books. One of them was the Monsters Manual. The other was the Player's Handbook.
Yeah,
So we didn't even have like the DM guide, like the book that explains all the rules. We didn't have that one.
yeah. There's
You know,
also
we
another guide that we didn't have.
we just wanted the book that had like the character classes and the equipment list.
Yeah,
And
sure. What else do we need?
off we went and just used D20 to solve everything. Want to do this really dumb thing? Well, I don't know, roll a D20.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That was a tangent. And what is that? Any of that has to do with Mr. Boogedy.
I don't know. I'm trying to trace it back, but I'm lost.
Yeah,
and
horror.
that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we call this the Wandering Tangent Podcast, because we expected that to happen more often.
Yeah. Oh,
Holy
well,
crap!
this is a good movie. It's a good movie, and it's especially good if you're not into the heavy horror stuff, but you want something clever and a little bit scary. And I think it's probably good for most kids. I
Yeah,
mean, I can't really say that for every kid because every kid's different. Some kids
every
really get scared at certain things, but
every
it
kid's
wasn't too
different.
scary.
It was pretty scary for 3-year-old me, but 3-year-old me was kind of a pansy.
Any 3-year-old might think this was scary.
Examining my life, like I watched it a few days ago, and I'm like, yeah, this movie scared me as a kid. And I'm like, no, a lot of things scared me as a kid. I mean, oh boy, there's stories that I want to share because they're just way too embarrassing.
Embarrassing
But there's,
stories?
well,
By the rules of now you've mentioned them, you now
damn
also
it.
have to tell them, right?
I guess so. Okay, so, so I am teased about this by my family to this day, but, uh, so I know you've been to Disneyland, but not recently. Do
True.
you, do you remember Storybook Land in, like, the kids section of Disneyland? Like a little boat ride, and it starts out by you going through a big stone monstro the whale.
No, I don't remember any of that.
Anyway, so yeah, you were probably too old when we went to go see it. But anyway, there's this big stone monster. So it's a kids ride. It's like a little boat ride. Apparently, when I went on it and we went through Monstro the Well, I was so terrified I tried to hide under the bench of the boat.
Well, it was a giant whale, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I remember watching Pinocchio and seeing that giant whale, and that whale was scary. I was
no, yeah,
terrified of that movie. It was my
it's that
favorite
whale.
film. I watched it over and over again, and it terrified me every time that whale came out. And there were other scenes that were scary too.
At this point, I feel like I shouldn't be surprised by what you call your favorite movies anymore, but Pinocchio?
Yeah, I still do. I really like the Disney Pinocchio. And honestly, I think that if anyone wants to get all philosophical, watch Disney's Pinocchio. And Pinocchio is a real philosophical story of itself, but I I really like the old Walt Disney version of it.
I am finding out all kinds of weird things about you in this podcast I don't know how I feel about.
Which is strange because we've known each other for decades, but I mean, how well do you really know someone, BJ? How well?
It's like how well do you really know someone until they start trying to convince you that. Oh, my phone just buzzed in the middle of that. Who's texting me?
Yeah,
Like the
you
only
better
person
pay
that texts
attention to
me,
your phone. It's obviously more important than me.
well, it's like the only person that texts me is you, and I'm talking to you. But
So what? You get one text every month or two? Because I don't text people very much.
something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, what? Anyway, was oh yes, I was about to roast you again. So anyway,
Yes, you were.
how will you know someone until they start trying to convince you that Star Trek: The Motion Picture is one of the best movies of all time, and that Pinocchio's their favorite Disney movie?
Yeah. Yeah, it's all strange like that. You know, people do say that the best movie of all time, I've heard this from many people, is Citizen Kane. And I don't think most people have seen Citizen Kane. And so the weird thing is the whatever becomes the best movie of all time is often a movie that people don't watch. It's just a movie that film students will watch, or, you know, nerdy people will talk about and say, "Oh, this is the most influential movie. It was groundbreaking," and people don't watch Citizen Kane. So I think
Yeah.
my selection of Star Trek 1, the motion picture, is valid because, hey, nobody watches it. That doesn't mean it wasn't the best movie ever made, because the real artsy fartsy ones may not be all that watchable, but they're still something.
One of these days, we need to figure out how to film this in person, just so you can see the looks I give you through the internet.
All the stares of disappointment. And
Just the sheer disapproval on my face right now. I'm shaking my head as if anyone can tell I'm shaking my head.
well, one of these days, BJ, you'll have to tell the whole world what your favorite movie of all time, or at least what you think is the best well-made movie of all time.
I don't know if I really
Okay,
have
well,
one.
that's your
I
homework
I
then.
don't
You
think
can
highly
think
enough of
about
my
it.
opinion. I don't want to go down the trap hole. I want to. Maybe Mr. Boogedy is not the best springboard into a discussion of what makes or breaks the best movies of all time, because now I lost my train of thought. There it goes off the
Yeah,
rails.
it didn't want to
Choo.
be in the conversation. The thought came and thought, no, not here, not now. I'm out of here, and it left.
A thought came. It's like, oh, sure is lonely around here. Gonna go somewhere else where there's some other
Yeah, it
ideas, and
probably
went
was the
away.
most insightful thing that anyone's ever said about film and entertainment, but it was just, this wasn't a
That is
worthy
extremely.
conversation of it, so I had to go.
Considering the fact it was coming from me, that's highly unlikely. So,
Oh, yeah.
anything
So,
else
would you
today?
recommend Mr. Boogedy to all the many people out there?
I I would. It's you have to go into it for what it is. It's a kids horror movie. It's has some pretty decent tension for it being that. The Oddly enough, I feel like the final confrontation is maybe the least scary part of the movie, like where they actually face off against Mr. Boogedy.
Yeah.
A lot of the build, well, like a lot of the build up, that's actually pretty good, but like the actual confrontation is kind of
Well, it's
meh. But
only,
I think
with the movies being as short as it is, you kind of have to wrap it up quickly. Yeah. I like the whole vacuum chase scene in its simplicity. But yeah, you almost feel like it should have been more grand somehow. I get what you're saying.
so I guess with the vacuum chase scene, that does kind of solve things in sort of a pretty Disney in the pretty Disney fashion. It's not really the heroes that overcome the villain. It's the villain's own hubris that defeats him, because he like enchants the vacuum to chase the kid around. The kid gets the vacuum to suck the magic cloak off Mr. Boogedy.
Yep.
So it's very much the bad guy being defeated by his own overconfidence.
Yeah, no movie's ever done that before.
Well, like I said, it's kind of a pretty standard
It
Disney
is,
trope,
and
isn't it?
it's good. I'm okay with movies being like that, where they just do the same thing movies always basically do. I'm okay with it, especially if it's just well done. And I think this Mr. Boogedy film did a pretty good job.
Yeah, a lot of people kind of talk bad on cliches or tropes. It's like, oh, this movie has so many tropes or so many cliches. It's like, yeah, do you want it's like you want to know why tropes are tropes. It's because
Yeah,
they
they
work.
work, and if you do them right, they work very well. But that's part of it. Do they do it well or not? And yeah, all the Halloween uh scary movie tropes in this, they're all good. They're good. So I recommend it too. I think this is a good watch for all those who want to celebrate the month of October and its spookiness.
So I do want to ask one more question because it sounds like we're getting ready to wrap things up. So so I admitted that the reason why I watched this movie is because it's the first movie that gave me a nightmare. So I want to turn the question around on you. Do you remember what the first movie that gave you a nightmare was, or has any movie or movie monster gave you a nightmare?
Uh Dumbo, another Disney movie. That movie gave me nightmares. The Umphilumps and Woozles, that whole song and the animation. Yeah.
Do you
Oh,
mean the Pink Elephants? Because the Humphlumps and Woozles that wasn't Dumbo.
what's
That
it?
was
Wait. No,
no.
that was
Humphlumps and Woozles
yeah, that's
was
Winnie the Pooh, right?
the
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Okay. Whatever it was yeah, Pink Elephants. Pink Elephants on Parade.
Pink Elephants yeah. Can't sing that song too much, otherwise we're gonna get copyright
Yeah,
struck by Disney.
the strange hallucinogenic experience that Dumbo has after he drinks too much. It was terrifying. Yeah. So Dumbo was scary, and I didn't like Dumbo as much. I liked Pinocchio. That was my jam. When I was little. But yeah, I would say that Dumbo scared me more, and probably early on. But yeah, that go. That's my earliest memory of being terrified by somebody's artistic film.
So was that just what scared you, or did it actually give you a nightmare?
A good question. I don't know if I remember a nightmare per
Because Mr.
se.
Boogedy actually gave me
Really?
a
What
nightmare.
was the nightmare? You
Yeah.
did Mr. Boogedy like come
Ah.
out into your dream or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Must have been horrible as a
It,
kid. Mr.
it,
Cheeseburger face.
it was, Mr. Cheese. He's all slimy and Mr. Hammer. Dad's about to go. Dad's going to try and negotiate a peace treaty with Mr. Hamburger
Yeah.
Face.
There are really good
That was
lines in
pretty
this
good line.
movie. Yeah, so your dream. What was your dream? You don't remember, but you remember you had a dream of some sort, right?
I remember I had a dream, Mr. Boogedy. I mean, again, I was like, assuming I watched this movie back when it first came out, I would have been like 3 or 4. So that was an awfully long time ago. I don't remember a lot of details of the movie. Or not the movie, of the nightmare.
Okay.
But there's definitely a nightmare that involves Mr. Boogedy. And
I remember one of my earliest nightmares that's completely unrelated to this, but I had a nightmare when I was very little, and I was walking on steps up a mountainside. It's a very steep mountain, and there were steps that went up, and then they would zigzag and sometimes go horizontal on the mountain. And there were many different stairways, and there was a purple monster on a different stairway. And I remember that I wanted to get to that stairway that the purple monster was on, but I couldn't get there because there wasn't a staircase that was joined with that one. So I kept going up and down the stairs trying to get there, and I never could. That was a scary nightmare, I guess.
but my first nightmare was Mr. Boogedy. My first nightmare was the existential crisis about the stairs.
Related to stairways. Yeah.
No, there's only been 2 movie monster give me nightmare. One was Mr. Boogedy. The other was the aliens from Xenomorphs. But I think I dreamed about those more because I was playing a lot of Aliens versus Predator 2 at the
Aliens
time.
from Xenomorph? Is that part of the Aliens film set franchise, whatever? What is that?
Well, that's what they...
Oh, they're called Xenomorphs, right? Because they change?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. they call the aliens and the aliens. Yeah, they call them
Yeah.
xenomorphs.
In Aliens, the sequel, they call them xenomorphs because they're scientific and
Yeah.
they know how to classify them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Scientific. Anyway, so.
Okay.
Uh,
I don't think
excuse me.
xenomorph is a real term. I think they just made that up for the movie.
No,
Is it?
no, it's a real term. It's like, yeah, xenomorph means like alien form or something like that,
I
right?
don't know. I think I looked it up once and I never. I don't know. Whatever. That's way too much of a tangent. Let's let that one go.
Really? Really? That's too much
Yeah.
of a tangent? After somehow we start talking about Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons, the aliens is too much of a tangent. At least it's in the same genre.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I gotta finish The Bride of Boogedy. I do. There's a couple of lines in that movie that are really funny, even if the pacing is not as good as the first one. And it's
Might watch it for fun.
watch it for
Oh,
fun.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, might watch it for fun. Don't think we're really going to talk about it on this.
Not really.
I think one Boogedy is good enough.
Yeah.
Though, while we're on the subject of what we're going to watch next, we want to let the people know what that's going to be.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
Why
Let's
not?
tell them what they're going to have next in approximately 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, on the off chance there's actually people listening to this, and if you made it this far, hi. But
And the few bots that listen too. I'm sure there's a
Yes.
few bots that are very, very loyal fans of this podcast.
if you're a bot and you made this far, beep boop. But anyway, the next movie we're going to watch, we're staying in the genre, but we're dialing it up to 11 because the next movie we're going to watch is the 1980 horror movie The Changeling, which is widely regarded as one of the scariest horror movies of all time. Well, maybe not widely regarded, but in a lot of times when I see people talk about the most scary horror movies, I see The Changeling on the list.
Yeah, it's definitely noted as being in a scary movie.
So it's not the Angelina Jolie one that's more recent. It's the 1981 starring George C. Scott.
Yes.
For anyone out there who wants to watch it before
Seems like any movie we review,
Before we talk
have
about
to
it.
always say, oh, nope, not the new one, the old one, because nearly every movie has been rebooted.
It's only been, anyway, this is the 5th movie we've done. It's only really had to do it with 2 of them. We had to do it with King Kong versus Godzilla because they did a new version of that, and then maybe Star Trek.
Well, they had to, it was more of a reboot of Wrath of Khan, not the icky, forbidden Star Trek, the one that we pretend didn't happen in 1979.
Anyway, before we
Before you comment about that.
it's like, oh, before we send Jeff down that rabbit hole again. Anything else you want to say about Mr. Boogedy?
Nope. Go watch it. It's a great movie.
Good time. So yeah. So that was us. I think maybe for the first time we had an episode that was more tangent than discussion.
I don't know. The other ones have a lot of tangent in them too.
Oh no, anyway, we're about to tangent about how much tangent there was. But anyway,
Yeah, that's a weird thing for us to do. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, we both recommend Mr. Boogedy. The good family movie, only about 45 minutes long, so it's hopefully not even long enough to make your kids bored even if they don't like it, but it's pretty entertaining all around. At the very least, the Addams Family guy is a hoot to watch, so if you watch it, just watch it for him.
So long.
Okay, so I'm BJ, with me is Jeff. This was the Wandering Tangent Podcast, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we talk about The Changeling. Have a good one.